Hello, and thank you for stopping by the Stuff I Heard podcast. I am your host, Joshua Peak. Hey, everybody. Today is Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019. My wife made a point that the last time I said the date, I said 2018. Sort of like that problem whenever you're writing down the new year and you're always forgetting what year it is, and you're like, oh, crap, and you have to write over it. I'm sure I'm the only one that does that. But anyway, so apparently I did that on the podcast, and you guys heard it. And so for those of you who caught it, yay. For those of you who didn't, oh well, no big deal. So yeah, today is Tuesday. And during the last podcast, I mentioned that I was listening to I was watching the Punisher on Netflix, season 2. And I had gotten like 6 episodes in. There's 13 episodes in the season. I finished them up. It was really fantastic. Really fantastic. The first one, when I watched the first season, I was excited because I kind of knew about the comic book character growing up as a kid, but I didn't really know what it was. And then during watching Daredevil on Netflix, they sprinkled in this character, this Punisher character, this guy who would, kill the bad guy when Daredevil would just try and, Pam, wow, kick, punch him out, And they fought each other. And the guy's like, the Punisher kept saying, let me do my job. This is my job. This is what I'm here for. Now, the character, Frank Castle, it plays a guy who was a former Marine who became Special Forces, and he was this elite guy that went out and killed the bad guy. And I can relate to that a lot, being in the Marine Corps. There is training where you're taught that your primary objective is to kill the enemy. And they don't mince any words about it. In the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, you have jobs. That's your job. You do a job. And you may never touch a weapon, depending upon your MOS, you may never touch a weapon again. But in the Marine Corps, your number one job is to kill the enemy before they kill you. And they tell you, every man a rifleman. We pride ourselves in marksmanship, and we train often, and we make sure that everybody's combat ready at all times. And, having a sort of superhero guy being this guy, I could relate to him. I know a lot of people are like, I am shocked, Josh. I am just really shocked. Well, get over it. It's fine. But I liked Frank Castle. I liked the character. I liked the fact that he was willing to... Because, you watch a lot of these superhero movies and they're constantly facing the same bad guy over and over again. And I'm thinking, why don't you just kill him? They've done enough to deserve it. Geez, come on. And it's weird that we watch television now and we sort of root for that. We root for the death. We root for the finality of, I'm sick and tired of this person constantly hurting other people. Why don't we just kill him? Why don't you just go ahead and kill him? And yet we're still a little weird about nudity on TV. Like, we're okay with blood and guts and gore and people's brains being split open and, The Walking Dead, Negan taking a baseball bat to what's his name's face. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. That was like season 4 or 5. Anyway, we're okay with violence, but yet we're not okay with nudity, which is weird because not all of us are violent, but all of us are naked. At times. I know some of you strange guys out there showering in your bathing suit. That's really weird. Don't do that. You need to actually wash all of your body so that all the germs get off. Some of my friends sent me a Facebook Messenger. There's some kind of company out there making something called Ball Wash. I'm not even mincing the words. It's called Ball Wash. And it's like a charcoal-based cleaner that it's supposedly you use to wash your balls with. And I'm thinking, yeah, but, does no one know about soap? Soap works pretty good. Who is that funky in their nuts that they have to have this special charcoal ball wash? And does the charcoal rub off? Do you get some of that, that dark charcoal-y tint in your skin? Is that safe? Is that okay? And what if you wash with that stuff and then you end up having sex with somebody? Does that rub off on inside the other person or on the other person, on their genitals? It just seems like you're inviting a lot of trouble there that doesn't need to happen. soaps work pretty good for, thousands of years, and I'm a big fan of soap, and, usually when I wash my balls with soap, I feel a lot better afterwards. Right now my mom's listening to this going, would you stop talking about your balls? Okay, anyway, I just wanted to talk about the fact that somebody out there is making ball wash, and that is the dumbest product ever. But I'm sure they'll sell a lot. I'm sure that out there's some dude with really funky nuts, and he's like, I gotta have me some of that. Or some girl out there who's dating a guy who's got really funky nuts. And if that's the situation, maybe you both have a problem. Might want to see a doctor. There might be something more going on there. Just a heads up. I just want you to be safe. I just want you guys to, be aware of your bodies and that kind of stuff. Speaking of being aware of your bodies, Netflix has a show on called Sex Education. Now, Gillian Anderson is advertised as being like one of the kids' moms on the show, and she's supposed to be like a professional sex therapist. And for those who don't know, Gillian Anderson was on a hit TV show called The X-Files. Her and whatchamacallit, Fox Mulder, what was his name? David Duchovny. Yeah, they were the duo during the 90s who were like FBI agents who went out there to find out if there was alien life or the unexplained, and they were supposed to explain it. And the premise of the show was that the FBI had certain files that they couldn't classify, so they were called the X-Files. And Mulder and Scully were going to investigate. And I got to tell you, as a young man watching Gillian Anderson on the X-Files, she was pretty hot. I'm saying she was a hot-looking woman, and she does not disappoint in this. She is still a hot woman. If anything, she's gotten prettier the older she's got. She is not the main character of this show. The show is really about her son and her son's friends and them going to school. And I don't know what country they're in. They're not in America. But there is some scenic views outside of where they live. Like, she has a house on the side of a mountain, and there's a river down below, and she's sitting out on the back porch a couple of times drinking coffee, and I'm like, oh my God, look at that place. That is gorgeous. And I'm like, elbowing my wife, look at this. Oh, who can live there? Where is that place? We need to visit there. That's beautiful. But the show is interesting. The show is about this kid who's, getting to the age where he's curious about sex and that kind of stuff, but he has something in his past that's traumatic, and it's kind of ruined him a bit. And I think I don't want to spoil it, but you learn why he's somewhat terrified of sex. And then he's at the age where his friends are starting to have sex and starting to talk about sex, and in some weird way he finds himself, because his mom is a sex therapist and he's often been around the corner listening to her talk to patients. And of course, she's talked to him very frankly. He's picked up on a lot of the terminology and a lot of the advice that she's given. And in a weird way at school, he finds himself being a sex therapist to his classmates. Unbeknownst to him, they have no idea that he doesn't have any experience whatsoever. And yet, they go to him for advice. And it's very cute. It's done very well. It's very sex positive. I like that term, sex positive. I learned that from a podcast, probably one of the very first podcasts I ever listened to, one called Sex Nerd Sandra. And I like the fact that on her show, she often talked about sex positivity and about not putting shame on sex, and that, we all experience sex and we all have different kinks and things that we like. And it's only weird when we let ourselves think that it's weird, but the main thing is to be safe. Like, that was her whole premise. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what your thing is. Let's talk about how to be safe. Right? It's not a bad idea, right? And that's sort of the premise of this show. They have a sex education class at school, and in it, they're learning about more than I learned when I was in school. And I don't know if that's a changing of the times. I don't know if they do this now in public schools, but they should. Let's be honest. There's things that are not taught in schools that should be taught. There are parts of relationships that should be taught. There are parts of personal finance that should be taught. We should have classes on how to treat one another with kindness and listen to other people's opinion, but there's not. Now, you would think that because we are all on this earth, and for some dumb luck, some of us end up procreating with other people, there would be a class on, hey, this is how you should do this properly. This is this is what you should know. This is how it affects your body. This is how it affects your feelings. This is how it affects your emotions, your hormones, your blah, 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 blah. And yet, I think especially being here in the South, it's more of a Puritan type society that still is like, oh, we don't talk about that. Oh, that's the naughty part we don't talk about. Oh. Okay, listen. This is 2019. We have the internet. No one has an excuse to be stupid anymore, okay? So whatever your weird hang-up is, get over it, grow up, and let's move forward, okay? We are literally talking about putting people on the friggin' moon, and yet we're still, oh my God, I don't want to talk about sex. It's so private. Oh, is it? Is it really? You can get literally anything you want on your phone with just a few clicks, and you think that your kids don't know about sex? Let that sink in for a second. Let's think about that. So anyway, this is a great show. I liked it. I thought it was a fun watch where they tackled some serious issues. The main character's best friend is gay, and his dad is ashamed of him, and his dad doesn't want his mother to know, and he wants to dress like a woman, and there's a scene where one of the main characters gets pregnant and she has an abortion, and it's not a happy moment. But they address that. They address her situation. They address the fact that, there are pressures put upon kids to achieve things that are sometimes unattainable. And sometimes they're just bored. And sometimes they're confused. And sometimes they don't know what they're doing. Because guess what? None of us really do either. So, if you're easily offended, don't watch the show. If you're curious, watch the show. I'm just going to warn you right off the bat, the first episode starts off with this guy and girl having sex. And they're supposed to be in high school, is the premise, okay? And right away, you can tell that the guy's not into it. And I drew a conclusion right away that ended up being true later, and you'll see what I'm talking about if you watch it. So, anywho, Gillian Anderson, you're still hot. Keep it up, girl. I'm really impressed. But anyway, I wanted to throw them some kind of love on Twitter or whatever, so I went online to see about their pages, and on there were hints of, well, if you like that, you'd also like this show on Netflix called Big Mouth. And I thought, well, what is Big Mouth? Big Mouth is an animated show, and it's supposed to be about these teenage kids who, well, I mean, it's kind of it's a similar situation. They're going through changes. They're figuring out that they're starting to be turned on by things. They're starting to go through puberty. And the interesting thing is that they imagine a big, giant, furry, troll-looking thing with a horn on its head. That is puberty. And for the guys, it tells them to do really awful things, and I don't want to say that it's not inaccurate. It's pretty rude, and it's pretty vulgar, and it's pretty, disgusting and accurate all at the same time. And that's hormones. That's, when you're that age, that's a lot of that's what you're going through your mind, and you're trying to balance out whether or not you like a girl, or whether or not she likes you, or whether or not you're even supposed to do anything other than just be friends. And it's interesting. They did a really interesting job. There's some episodes that are, I've watched the first season and a few episodes in the second season. Those are only 20-something, 27 minutes long, 28 minutes long. Those are pretty quick. It's funny. There's a lot of stuff in it that's just silly, over the top silly, and they do it because it's silly. And I enjoyed it. So anyway, get over it. Get over it, people. It's time to grow up. I did get the chance to listen to quite a bit of podcasts this week. I found myself a little bit of free time. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And I went on the Joe Rogan spiral. I went deep. I I listened to Mike Tyson's interview. I think I talked about that last episode. I also listened to him interview Adam Greentree. He's from Australia. He's a bow hunter and photographer. He has a podcast called Bow Hunter's Life. Very interesting podcast. This guy's a conservationist, and he eats what he kills, and he is he's a man's man. He's doing it. He's living the life. That was episode 1224 that came out January 14th. The very next day, January 15th, Theo Von, stand-up comedian, television personality, and actor. He has a podcast called This Past Weekend and The King and the Sting with Brendan Schaub, both available on iTunes and YouTube. Theo Von, I don't know where Theo Von is from, but he has a very country accent, and he's got sort of a rednecky version of how city folk look at life, which is funny because it reminds me of a lot of the people that I grew up with. Not necessarily my friends, but family. So if you're one of the family, guess what? I love you. Episode 1226 is with Mike Baker. Mike Baker is a former CIA covert operative. He currently is the president of Diligence LLC, a global intelligence and security firm. So Mike Baker used to be a spook, okay? A CIA operative. Very interesting podcast. This guy has been on Joe's podcast before. He knows a lot about what goes on that you don't know about, and will kind of hint at things that are going on, but not tell you everything, because you don't need to know. I know that sounds weird, but sometimes you don't need to know everything, okay? And I know there's a lot of nosy people out there that are like, but I gotta know. No, you don't. You don't have to know everything. Just let it go. Just be happy and stick up with the status quo, watch the Kardashians, do whatever. No, don't watch the Kardashians. Don't promote them anymore. They've got way too much fame for nothing. But Mike is an interesting podcast. That was episode 1226. Came out this past Wednesday. Let's see, what else did I listen to? That's it. That's all the podcasts I listen to. Oh, I want to talk a minute about dreams. Can we talk about dreams? I had a dream last night that woke me up, and it's one of those things where I spent a lot of time thinking about dreams when I was younger. When I was younger, I used to have dreams that were disturbing, and I would wake up and wonder, why would that even be in my brain? Why would I dream that? And I've read a lot of books, and I've listened to a lot of people talk about it, and Pete Holmes is a comedian and actor. He has a show on HBO called Crashing. I think they're getting ready for season 3. He also has a podcast called You Made It Weird. It's a very good podcast. I recommend checking it out. Look for any interview that he does with anybody you recognize. Because one of the things that Pete does, much like Joe Rogan, is he is interested in the people that he interviews. So when he has somebody on, he's going to learn about them, he's going to ask really good questions, and he's going to have a good back and forth conversation. He is a great conversationalist. Not only that, he's very deep thinking, and he likes to be a little bit silly, but he reads a lot and he studies a lot. And the crazy thing is, before he became a stand-up comedian, he was actually going to school to be a pastor. He was in Israel on a trip and questioned his faith, and it sort of changed directions for him in his life. And now he's at a time where he was married, and he got divorced, and lost his faith all at the same time, and then refound his faith, and is sort of finding his way again in life as he's gotten remarried and he has a kid. So Go check out his podcast. It's called You Made It Weird. It's really good. Anyway, he had a podcast one time about dreams where he said, if you think about it, when you dream, you are actually every character in your dream. He said, the way I know that is, I had a dream about my mother and I said something really crappy to my mother and I made her sad. My mom's not having that dream. It's my dream. I know she's sad because in my dream I'm also my mother. And he's right. And he says, if you have a dream where something is coming after you and you know that it means to intend you harm, you only know that because you're also that thing that's coming after you. Because you populate your own dreams. There's nothing else external that's putting things into your brain. It's you. It's all you. So if you're nervous about something, it's because your brain is trying to figure out how to problem solve a situation ahead of time. Whenever you do things in your normal life and you say, I just did my gut reaction, it's not a gut reaction. It's actually your brain has worked this thing over in your subconscious millions of times in different scenarios, and it's picked out the one scenario that it thinks is the best option because you've contemplated it in your dreams. Now, I said all that to say this. I had a dream last night that was very disturbing, where my wife and I were taking a flight in a very unconventional type ship. And I don't know what it was, and I don't know where we were going, but I remember being really low to the ground and seeing buildings come way too close to what we were flying in. And we weren't exactly strapped in. At a certain point it turned and we were having to move from our chairs to the side of the wall to a padding to hold ourselves. And when we finally landed, we were given a packet and we were told to follow the directions on the packet to go to some other thing. And I remembered something that Pete had talked about in his dream podcast, where he said that if you are lucid dreaming and you are really into it and you can't figure out whether you're awake or asleep, if you have the ability to stop and look at your hands, because apparently in your dreams you can't make out your own hands. You can't see your own fingers. You get concept ideas and you get facial recognition and stuff like that, but you cannot have the ability to see your hands in your dream. And also, if you have something that can be read, try and read it, because it cannot be read in your dream. There's no actual words on a piece of paper. And I thought about that the minute that somebody handed me this booklet of stuff that I was supposed to follow these directions, and I was like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I mean, we're in a weird land. I don't know how we're supposed to get to this place. What about our kids? What about, and which is all made up scenarios in my head. And then I heard a voice in my head go, hey, look down at the paper and see if you can read this. And when I looked down at the paper, all the words were just like shadowy and wispy, and they just kind of flew off the page. And I thought, wait a second, I am dreaming. And I was like, this is enough of this. Wake up, Josh. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I woke up. I was able to, at that moment, recall the conversation that Pete had where he said, you are every character. I knew in the dream that my wife and I were both nervous about this flight. And she was fearful at times. And I knew that because in my dream I'm also her. I'm also the person who handed me the packet. Maybe I handed myself the packet because I knew I had listened to Pete's podcast where he said, you can't read anything. And here I am in my dream freaking out about this dream because we're flying way too low to buildings, in between buildings. And sort of as a transport, I meet myself in the dream and hand myself a piece of paper and say, here's your directions. And I found my way out of it. What do you think? It's pretty good stuff, right? I had this conversation once with my wife's dad. He and I were talking about the fact that he was having a lot of bad dreams. And I noticed that during the evening, he was watching Fox News every night. And Fox News just sells you fear. That's their whole thing. They want to sell you fear so that you tune in tomorrow to watch fear again. They're not by themselves. CNN does it too. They just sell different versions of fear. And they want you to be afraid. They want you to tune in tomorrow to find out what's going to get you and how you need to be prepared for the other side. And he would watch that for hours and then go to bed and then toss and turn all night about, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What? And I said, why don't you stop doing that? Because you've let Fox News become the seed in your brain. And in your dreams, the garden is turned into more fear. You've let that invade your life as the most important thing in your life. Fear has become the number one thing you think about. What if you changed directions? What if you picked up a different hobby? What if you did something different before bed? What if you just turned off the news for a while? I turned off the news and I don't worry about it at all. Now, it's not to say that you should stick your head in the ground and think that the world's going to be okay if you don't look at it. Pay attention to what's going on. But don't let it be the most important thing in your life. The world is going to be okay. There are people out there whose number one concern is what to do about the other people. And they're going to be like at each other. Like if you watch The Matrix, you know, and you got Neo and you got Agent Smith, or Star Wars, okay? You got the Jedis and you got the Sith, and they're opposing forces. And if you ever notice, they're also equally opposing forces, because when one of them goes away, the other one has to go away. You can't have one without the other. They need to both coexist in order to be there. The same can be said... Oops. Sorry. Stupid phone. I get telemarketer calls all the time. But the same could be said about opposing forces in your life, no matter what it is. So, think about the seeds that you put in your brain. Think about the things that you listen to. Think about the things that you place as importance in your life. And if you're not happy with the situation, reevaluate it. Change direction. If you're having a very weird dream and it upsets you, when you wake up, immediately think, wait a second, I'm every character. What am I worried about? Am I afraid of me? Is it just my own fear? What is my fear from? This travel fear in my brain, I think, has to do with the fact that we are planning a trip. We are looking at possibly going to an Alaskan cruise later this year. And in it, we have to renew our passports. And we have to renew our licenses, which I did. I talked about doing the new federal Real ID license. And my wife still has to do it, but we also have to, redo our passports. And we're going to fly across the country, and then we're going to get on a cruise ship. And, when there is things in the works, sometimes your brain is preparing yourself ahead of time, saying, listen, we don't like flying, but just in case you had forgotten, here's some fear about your flying, and we're going to put that in your dreams. So maybe I thought about that before I went to bed. But the good thing is I was informed enough to get myself out of it. So, there you go. I'm going to wrap this thing up. I would like to thank everybody for writing me and, saying hey and let me know that you're listening. I am happy with the fact that the podcast seems to be cruising right along. I'm getting some people lined up for interviews, and that'll be coming your way. Yeah, a lot of cool things coming. Everybody take care. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, share, tell your friends, and, send me some love on Instagram or email. And that's it. Bye now.